Now this next verse is really difficult to comprehend, because the next two verses talks about something that is so heavy that it would take about 3 weeks for me to teach it. But let me just mention a couple of thoughts. When I was woven together in my mother's womb, in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. God says when the sperm and the egg collided and germination took place, my eyes was on that. And my eyes never left it. That means there's one thing God is always watching, and that's a pregnant woman. So when you go to get your private abortion, all of heaven is front row watching. God is personally observing the awesome potential that you are meddling with. You don't know who you're carrying. That's why you shouldn't touch this stuff. Suppose Mary had an abortion. I'm so glad that Moses' mother saved his little body, because in that basket was Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. In that basket was the 10 Commandments. Tell your neighbor, you don't know who you're carrying. That son who seemed to be so wayward right now, and that daughter who seemed to be so much against social and academic harmony, the one who seems so rebellious, don't you dump that daughter. Man, who would imagine that a serial killer, a guy who killed so many people that we lost count, that in that serial killer was 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Colossians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Titus, and Timothy, and Philemon. 3/4 of the New Testament was in a serial killer. You just never know who he's knitted together. I'm so glad your mama didn't abort you. And I say to every doctor watching this program who's practicing abortion, the only reason why you are able to practice abortion is because your mama didn't do it to you. Verse 16. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days of my life were already ordained for me and were written in your book before any one of them began. This is where it gets deep. Not only did he form me in my mother's womb, but it says all of my days of all of my life were already ordained for me, finished and programmed, and were written in his book before any one of the days began. In other words, before I was born, there was a book on my life that was finished. You are not a mistake. You are a bestseller waiting to be written. All of my days were already recorded in your book, and they were there finished before I was released from my mother's womb. That means God has a book on your life, and God never writes anything less than a bestseller. God has never produced a failure yet, even though people fail. This also means in the next verse that in that book God has written everything you're supposed to do and be. And the next verse says, and the thoughts that you have of me, O Lord, are so awesome that if I were to try to comprehend them, it would be as awesome as attempting to count the sands on the seashore. I hope you get this thing. It's strange. It says the book on my life has some thoughts in it that you have about me. And the thoughts you have about me are so awesome that if I attempt to understand them, it would be as awesome as trying to count the sands on the seashore. In other words, the stuff God has written on you will blow people's mind. The stuff that you are supposed to do on this planet before you die are so amazing that if God was to tell you them even now, you tell God he's lying. And that's the problem. The problem is you've been traveling at 55 and God's trying to get you up to 160 and you're saying this can't go 160. You know why you don't go beyond 55? I'm going to tell you why. Because there's some laws that have been created by man. And those laws say you can't travel beyond the speed limit. The last time I spoke to the manufacturer, I asked him, what are my possibilities? How fast can I really go? And the last time I spoke to the manufacturer and asked him, what are my possibilities? You know what he said to me? All things are possible if you believe. I like that. There's a book on your life, young man. That's why you shouldn't settle for the grade book out of school. You shouldn't settle for the report card that they gave you, because that's not the book on your life. Now the question is, what are these thoughts? Please check verse 17. How precious to me are your thoughts, O Lord. How vast, how big, how awesome they are the sum of them. Were I to attempt to count them and understand them, it would be as if I'm trying to do the impossible. Like count the sand on the seashore. Do you get the spirit of what he's talking about? He's saying the book on your life has information in it, and the information is so awesome that it will blow everybody's mind. And if you were to try and understand what God thinks of you and what he wrote for you to do and what he planned for you to accomplish, you yourself would have difficulty believing it, because your social and mental conditioning restrains you from accepting God's vision. What are these thoughts that God have about you? And this is what I want to close on. I want you to turn with me to 1 Corinthians. I want you to connect these thoughts. 1 Corinthians chapter 2. It's the manual we're reading on the product. Tell your neighbor, I feel my engine's rearing up. Tell your neighbor, I'm going to leave you in a minute. When I come back here next year, you shouldn't be where you are in life. Did I say come back? That means you shouldn't be working in that same position. Put your eyes on your boss's chair. Oh, come on, somebody. Stop settling down for being a secretary. That's only a temporary detour on your way to employing yourself.